Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
Okay, let's start with the Giannis trade. So people have been saying 15 months in the making that Giannis is finally traded to the Miami Heat. Now the trade is not official until July 6th. And the only reason why I say that is because other teams can get involved in the trade. So we might see more movement and more assets going to the Bucks or the Heat for the trade. Okay, so right now, as it stands, though, the Heat traded away Tyler Hero, Hodges, Ware, Jaconis,
Yakachunas.
Yakachunas. I almost nailed that. 13th pick, a 31 and 33 first, a 30 swap, and a second round pick in the future, correct?
Yep.
The Bucks gave up to the Miami Heat, Giannis and Bobby Portis. So let me get your initial thoughts, Clint, on this trade when it went down. And then we'll kind of talk about each team.
Yeah. So from a basketball point, like you mentioned, it was quite obvious, especially the last couple of weeks, this was going to happen. It was pretty much down to the Heat or the Celtics, and they were kind of going back and forth. From the aspect of getting what you could, obviously, if we take into account, they should have probably traded him last year, and you probably do better than this.
Correct.
Because you're kind of limited on some teams when he's down to his last year. I thought this was probably the best that they could do. And I think it's a fairly good haul. Obviously, you don't get like a blue chip, like awesome, hang your hat on type of player. Your mileage can vary on Tyler Hero, and we'll see if he stays with the team. Like, he's probably the best, quote, player in this trade. But I just think, like, you got the unprotected picks, 2 of them in the future, the swap unprotected. Like, these are 5. I know it sounds weird because it's like 5, 6, and 7 years out, but you're doing that because you assume, obviously, Giannis is not going to be the player he is. And you were also able to get rid of Bobby Portis' contract, which, as we break this down, will help the Bucks like get off that money so they could take bad contracts. They have quite a bit of cap room at this point in 2027 to do the, like, hey, let's take on some money for some assets. So from an asset play, obviously you would love to get Jaylen Brown and a bunch of picks, but that's just not the reality when you only have 1 year on your contract. But to pretty much raid Miami of all that they had, minus Pelle Larsson and maybe one other swap, look, I think it's fine. It's a great start to rebuilding. You're obviously breaking news, not competing for a title in the next few years.
Right.
So you start it over, you get some young guys in there, and let's see what we can cook.
Yeah, I think this might set a tone too for like the new big name trades, because this is kind of the biggest name that has been traded since the second apron, right? Like, has been established. And with the new lottery rules on top of it. And I think that's why maybe the Bucks did not get the haul that you're right about the last year of the contract. But I also think it's like, because there's so much randomness in the future, like nobody knows what's going to happen to the picks, the second aprons. We see how the parity is ending up in the NBA. So teams don't want to just gut their teams for one guy because, like, you kind of need a whole roster now. So I think this might be like the new norm for like a top 5 player that's he's still got about maybe 2 more years in his prime, 3 more years, but he's sort of towards the end of his prime at 31, 32. And so I think this, I know there's a lot of people beating it up, but I do wonder if this is kind of like the new normal for a big name guy like Giannis exiting his prime type thing.
Yeah, I agree. If he had 3 years left on his deal, I think you would make a case that you could get more from a team.
Sure.
But then again, you have to find the right team. And like you said, a lot of teams are tied up with money. And to take on a big contract and then give him an extension on top of that, I think is going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think, we've said it before, with 1 year left, he can kind of put his thumb on the scale. He didn't as much as he probably should, and we can get into that when we break down Giannis himself. But I think you're right. Unless we get to like Anthony Davis wanting to, I mean, not Anthony Edwards wanting to be traded right now.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot of this with guys getting, you can't go, these teams don't want to go over the second apron or stay there.
Correct. And so like especially if they're again 31, 32, getting close to like Booker in 2 or 3 years, if he wanted to be traded, I don't know if you get much more than this wouldn't they probably wouldn't even get this much. So that's sort of my point. But like you mentioned Anthony Edwards, obviously you're gonna give the house for him, right? Um okay, let's talk about each team and what we expect. Let's put the Bucks to the side for a second, talk about the Heat first. Um, so this is sort of their all-in move. They've been running, trying to catch the next big name star. This is who they got, Giannis. You put him next to Bam Adebayo. You got Portis coming off the bench. Wiggins is still there, and I think who's their Mitchell? Davion Mitchell, right? That's their point guard. How do we feel about the like? I don't the fifth seed. Like, what does this do for them?
Yeah. And this is where, and I'll cover. We'll do it like a little Giannis when we wrap this up.
Yeah,
this team isn't that good. I mean,
Mhm.
I know Bam is really good, and he might be technically the best center that Giannis is going to play with. And as far as like switchability on the defensive end, like Brook Lopez was always kind of like a one-trick pony, right? Like you could probably have a good defense here, switching Bam and Giannis whenever necessary. They're light on shooting. They're light on creation. There's spacing problems here. I know if you listen to other pods, it's like, Giannis traded Miami or Milwaukee for Milwaukee South. Like, he's not going to like this vastly improved. Like, is this team better than the Dame Bucks? Certainly have better coaching, and that's going to go a long way in this. But if you look at that and not knowing what's going to happen with Norman Powell, like the Pistons are a team that seem to like wanting Norman Powell and are going to, when we get to the Stewart trade, kind of foreshadows what might be coming.
Yeah.
Maybe they can pull another rabbit out of their hat. Like you said, these trades can expand. So maybe they move Portis to some other bad team who thinks he's valuable, and they free up more cap space, and they can, maneuver some of this. But I don't think you're going to look at this Heat team and be like, definitely a top 4 team in the East. And if you get to the point where Bam misses 20 games or Giannis can't play 66, 67, 70 games, I don't think they're going to be like a powerhouse, at least this first year.
Yeah, I agree. I think so the positive, I like that you started with the positive. Like their defense is going to be pretty interesting. And I agree kind of like with the Dame Bucks, but the Dame Bucks didn't have a second guy like Bam. Like, right, Bam's the best player out of the two teams that you would pair with Giannis, right? I think that could be interesting and I trust like Eric Spoelstra to figure that out. The offensive side is where you're going to have the biggest questions because of the spacing issues. And you saw like a team like Detroit, when San Antonio couldn't hit their shots anymore, like spacing is huge in the playoffs. And if you can't, you don't have it, it's going to come to bite you. So who the other three guys is very important. And like you said, Norman Powell would ideally be a good fit because he's like a 40% three-point shooter, but it doesn't seem like they'll have the money to get him. So I like it defensively. Kind of, I'm intrigued defensively by it, but offensively, I'm like, man, it's going to be such a mud in the offense where Giannis has zero spacing to maneuver with the ball. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, and that's what I mean too. Like, I mean, let's just assume Andrew Wiggins is back. Either he's just picking up that option or an extension. The guys you're going to bring in are the guys we talk about when we talked about the Bucks, when we talked about the Nuggets, when we talked about the Suns with KD. They're minimum guys for a reason.
Right.
And they're going to be good. And I think if this team is healthy, no matter who they put around it, it's probably going to be a fairly good regular season team. You're going to stack wins just on the defensive end.
Yep.
But those guys are limited. And when you get, like you said, if you played the Pistons, heck, if you played the Magic, how the Magic played in the playoffs, Davion Mitchell's going to get 33s a game, and you're like, all right, he shot decent last year. Again, the playoffs are different. You bring in a minimum guy. We saw this with the Bucks. There's regular season shooting, and there's playoff shooting.
Yeah.
And I think you just get stuck with guys that are just playoff shooters, and the moment gets too big, it speeds up, and they miss five, and then you got to find the next guy off the bench. So from that aspect, I don't see this team as a serious contender as of right now. And that's even if they found a way to bring Norman Powell back. Like, I don't think that makes a huge variance, because then you're going to get into some guards that, cool, now we found the guy to go after type of situation. So you're right. I think we're on the same page with defense, but I just think you don't take this team and be like, wow, Miami just moved up to a top 3 team in the East.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay. On the other side, Bucks, you talked about the haul they got. It was fairly decent. Couple of young guys. I do like the idea of Ware. Now, whether he realizes that potential, and the Bucks, like, real quick, Jenkins. No, not who's their coach, right? Taylor
Jenkins. Yep.
He helped groom the Memphis Grizzlies young guys. He helped grow that roster and help those young guys develop. And so I do like the idea of like giving him young guys to develop, because I think he's really good at it. So I'm wondering what he could do with someone like Ware, or even, Jaquez. He's a fine player. He's going to be a good, starter / bench player, whatever you use him for. And then like we'll talk about the draft in a second, but what you could do with the picks. But overall, I just thought they're going to be one of those teams who doesn't care how many games they win, because they don't own their picks. And with the new lottery odds, if you end up one of the 3 worst teams, you get 2 balls anyway. So who cares?
Yeah. Right. So if things go on the bad end, you're right. The Bucks would be one of those teams like, I don't even care for give us the 1 ball this year. But I do think one of the things overlooked by Bucks fans or people, like if you listen to Bill Simmons, who's on the copium right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and Ryan Russillo, like, who hates it. Like, I think they are thinking of the Bud, Adrian Griffin, Doc Rivers coach Bucks.
Yeah.
And not that the Bucks by any means drafted good players, but none of those guys all those years were like developed.
Right.
It was like, we have a system. It's Giannis. It's this. If you can't fit in, the bus is moving without you. I think it's going to be like, I was texting someone today, I actually think it's going to be shockingly refreshing as a Bucks fan to have a coach that has like a plan and works to develop these guys. What he did in Memphis with some of these guys, Jaren Jackson, Scottie Pippen Jr., Gigi Jackson, like these guys coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? So I just think someone like Khalil Ware, there's, his work ethic isn't always awesome, but if you can get him in there, he has the tools to be, I'm not going to say he's Jaren Jackson, but like a type of player like that, right? He can shoot, he can defend. Same with these other guys. That's my positivity in all this, is that we have a coach that actually like has a staff that's developed young guys. So when we think of the past,
right? Yeah.
So I think obviously you're not going to hit home runs with all these guys, but I think it's going to look better than we would have thought if that was Doc Rivers out there.
Oh, 100%. And I actually honestly think that, I mean, we've talked about it, but Doc Rivers for the last 2 years was also part of the Bucks' problem, why they weren't successful. And I think someone like Bill Simmons, who has Doc Rivers on his podcast, won't actually say it. But I don't think the roster was as bad as they look necessarily. It wasn't much better, but I don't think Doc Rivers is the type of coach that would have got the best out of that roster anyway. But yeah, so I do like the idea of Jenkins being there to help groom these young guys. And then Tyler Hero, I don't think he'll be on the Bucks at the start of the season. He might be, but then you just build his trade value and then trade him at the deadline. That would be the other option. The thing you have working against Tyler Hero right now is his injury history hasn't been great the last couple seasons, and he is on an expiring. So whatever team gets him has to deal with whether or not they're going to extend him or not. So that's the only difficult. But I think you still get some assets for him eventually.
Yeah, and look, I wouldn't be like, he's not my favorite type of guy. Like we've kind of made fun of Tyler here. At least I have over the years. Like he's that all offense, doesn't kind of care. Maybe you can change some of that. Maybe he's motivated. You can play those tunes all you want. So, I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they kept him. And if you're keeping him, depending on what you do with like Miles Turner and stuff like that, I think you can still be. I think you text me like it's a great start to a 38-win team, and I think you're right. Like if you keep that team like with Hero and Miles Turner and whatever you have, you could probably get in that range. And I don't think that's like, again, you don't have your pick. That's not terrible, but
right.
You're right. I think by drafting a guard, and the NBA is about to open up, and I think it depends if the Pistons can get Powell or whatever. You're probably right. He probably gets moved on, but it might be closer to the deadline.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, anything else on this trade?
The only thing, so I was texting today.
Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.